Hi everyone, welcome to my channel where I just want to talk about books, and today we are going to be doing the Reader Problems book tag. Don't mind how super uninteresting my background is. I just moved and haven't decorated yet, and I'm aware it's uninteresting. So in the meantime, please enjoy Cat Tree. Got little friend hanging out up top, that's Mr. Ash, he says hello. To my understanding, the original creator of this book tag was a channel called About to Read, but that video has since then been privated. So I cannot link it, but that is who originally created it. Okay, question 1 on this book tag is, you have 20,000 books on your TBR, how in the world do you decide what to read next? That is a struggle that I completely relate to, I completely feel that. My answer is, I am such a mood reader that it is completely spontaneous. It's almost like compulsive. When I decide, I'm like, I want to read that book right now, like that is the book that I will pick up, that is the book that I will read. And a lot of books, even if I get it and I'm like, it sounds really good, I'm excited to read it, I'm sure I'll like it, but I'm not feeling it right now, just put it on the back burner, and I'll circle around to it when I feel inspired. Some of the things that inspire me to pick up a certain book will be if I'm watching BookTube, and one of the channels that I'm watching will like hype it up. I'm like, I'm ready for it, you've sold me, gonna read it right now. And yeah, sometimes it's spontaneous, sometimes I'll just see a book on my bookshelf and be like, this is the one right now. So it really comes down to just a spontaneous mood, just whatever I'm feeling, I am going to read that book, and that is the book that I will read. Question number 2, you are halfway through a book and you are not feeling it, you're just not loving it. Do you quit or are you committed? That is an interesting question. I think for me, it comes down to a couple of things. The number one thing being the media, or like the form of which I'm reading that book. If I am reading it as an audiobook, I'm a lot more likely to stick with it because I can increase the listening or the playback speed. So I will do that if there's a book where I'm like, I'm not really feeling it, I'm not ready to DNF it, I'll increase the speed. So I'll listen to it on like double speed or even sometimes higher. So I'm not like abandoning the book, but I'm not paying quite as much attention. I guess it's like the audiobook equivalent of skimming. Whereas if I am reading a physical like book is in my hands, printed edition, I'm a lot more likely to DNF a book if I'm not enjoying it, just because that's a little bit more tedious and kind of like time consuming. Whereas if I'm listening to an audiobook that I'm not enjoying, I can like put it on in the background while I'm doing laundry or something where it's like, I'm not enjoying it, but I'm doing other stuff, so it kind of balances out, if that makes sense. I think also it depends on the book itself. If it was just like a random find, like, it was kind of a gamble and it didn't really work out, I didn't like this book, I'm like, well, now we know. If it's like a really popular release that everyone on like BookTube is talking about, or if it's on the top charts, I'm a lot more likely to stick it out to see like, okay, is there something that I'm missing? Like, is there gonna be a big twist at the end? But you know, just like everyone else read it, I want to at least finish it so I can contribute to the conversation and be like, I read it and I didn't like it. So I guess like the hype and the scale of the popularity of the book also makes a difference on whether or not I finish it. Question number 3 is, the end of the year is coming and you are so close but so far away on your Goodreads reading challenge. Do you try to catch up, and how? I've definitely done that in the past where I was like really close to my Goodreads goal and I really wanted to meet it. If it's like a really nice number, like 50, I'm like, oh, I'm so close, or like 75, I'm like, I want to hit that. So sometimes I will scale back like the books that I'm reading. I'll read like a lot of short stories or a lot of like shorter books as opposed to my traditional like 400, 500 page books. I'll be like, 62 pages. Let's read a lot of books that are 62 pages. Like, sometimes I have been known to do that in the past, but ultimately, like I'd said in question 1, I'm such a big mood reader that I'll read what I want to read, and if there's a bunch of books where I'm like, nope, we're reading this right now, it's like, well, that's what we're reading, so either you meet the goal or you don't, but I do like meeting the goal. I do like hitting the satisfying number. Question 4 is, the covers of a series you love do not match. How do you cope? Yeah, that's annoying. That, I don't like when that happens. I have actually switched over from like physical books. The majority of my library is either ebooks or audiobooks now. So I have like a similar but like slightly different problem where ebooks will just automatically update in my Nook library, and it will just update the cover. And it's so frustrating, especially when I don't like the new cover. Like, you know, lots of books will have different editions, and when you're shopping in store and you're purchasing like a physical book, you can be like, I like this cover better. And it's super frustrating when your Nook library just updates and you're like, I don't like it anymore. I don't like it, and that's super annoying. But there's also nothing I can do about it. I have looked into like, is there a way to change that? Like, you used to be able to change album art on iTunes. I'm like, can you do that on Nook? But it doesn't seem like you can. My friend, cute, is distracted by cat. But no, it doesn't seem like there's anything I can do about it, so it's just kind of like, but at least in that sense, it is on an ebook library as opposed to like physical bookshelves being displayed, so it's not really that noticeable until you're scrolling through my e-reader. So it's annoying, but I can't change it, so oh well, just living with it. Okay, the next question says, everyone and their mother loves a book you really don't like. Who do you bond with over shared feelings? If there's a book that I could not stand and everyone else is just raving about it, I will scour through BookTube to find at least one other person on there who also did not like the book. And I will just be like, finally, like that validation, because it is really satisfying, and I feel like therapeutic almost to be like, okay, I'm not alone, someone else didn't like this book, so I will scour until I find someone else that didn't like it. So that's kind of my best thing. I have a couple of readers in my real life, but we usually don't read the same types of books. There's not really a lot of overlap, so there's not really someone in person that I can be like, I do have a couple of loved ones that I will just like talk at about books where they haven't read them, they can't relate, and I'll be like, this is so frustrating, listen to this. So I'll just kind of talk at them about it, but really it'll just be like certain corners of BookTube. I'll just hunt until I find someone else that didn't like it and be like, yes, validation. So that's how I cope with that. Question number 6 says, you are reading a book and you are about to start crying in public. How do you deal? I feel like when it comes to crying in public, I am someone who, if I'm about to cry, it is going to happen regardless of where I am, what I am doing, and I'll try to do that like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. It does not work. So just like, hi. So I feel like, I don't know, if it's because of a book, that's not the worst reason I've cried in public. That sounds terrible. But if it happens, it happens. I don't really read that many books that make me cry. I don't know if it's just because I read like happier books or it doesn't like usually get to me, but the few times that I can think of where a book has made me cry, it's usually at home. Like I can tell it's kind of a sad scene or I'm not really feeling it, so I just won't really read it in public. So I can't off the top of my head think of an instance where that has happened, where a book has made me start crying in public. But even if it did, I probably would just be like, what am I gonna do, stop reading? Like, it's just gonna happen. Whoever is on the bus or wherever I am is just gonna have to deal with it. Like, I don't know them, I won't see them again. Just let me have my moment. Number 7, a sequel to a book that you love just came out, but you've forgotten a lot about the last book. Will you reread it, or skip the sequel, or try to find a synopsis on Goodread, or just cry in frustration? What do you do? For this one, I am not someone who really rereads books, which I feel like is rare. It seems like a lot of people on BookTube love rereads. I'm not that person. It's super rare if I reread a book, so not that one. But at the same time, I don't want to forget. I want a refresher before I go into a sequel or another book in the series. So usually what I will do is either try to find a BookTuber that talks about it, maybe does like a reading vlog with spoilers, being like, this just happened, and then this, so it'll kind of be a refresher. Occasionally, I have looked up like SparkNotes style, like summary of what happened, just so I can have some sort of refresher. But also that's usually only if it's like I read the book several years ago, or there was like a lot that happened I don't super remember. The majority of the time I'll be like, it'll probably come back to me as I start reading, so it's not uncommon for me to just jump in blind and be like, we'll probably pick it up from context, right? Like, we'll remember, it's fine. Number 8 says, you do not want anyone borrowing your books. How do you politely tell people no when they ask? Yep, that's a vibe. For me, like I said, I've moved nearly the majority of my library is now in either ebooks or audiobooks form, which certainly makes it easier because when I don't have physical books, like, they can't ask to borrow them. Also, I have been like ping-ponging around the country recently, and that also makes it easier where I'm like, oh, I own this book, but it's back home across the country, so like it's not with me. So that has alleviated a lot of people asking. But other than that, I have been known to do the like, yeah, absolutely. And then like, oh, I keep forgetting to get it to you. And then just like, ride it out. Hopefully they forget, or like I move away, or like something like that. But no, I don't like people like touching my stuff, but especially like a book, I'm like, yeah, you can't borrow that. Nothing against you. Don't touch it. It's mine. No, you can't have that. But yeah, having a virtual or like a digital library definitely helps with that problem. Question number 9 says, reading ADD, you've picked up and put down 5 books in the last month. How do you get over your reading slump? I'm like trying to think, how do I get over a reading slump actually? Audiobooks are a great way for me to get over a reading slump, whether I have already been listening to the book in audiobook format, or sometimes if like reading it with my eyes isn't working out, I will switch over to the audiobook. That helps a lot when, you know, sometimes you're like, I don't really have it in me to like pick up a book and lay there and read, but it's one thing if you're like, well, I have to do laundry, and I could either do laundry in silence or I could listen to this book as an audiobook while I do laundry. But reading the book in that audiobook format, it makes it a lot easier to just slip reading into your everyday life and just what you were already doing, so that makes it a lot easier to get out of a reading slump. But also, watching a lot of BookTube, that makes a big difference. Like, watching other people be really enthusiastic about books, whether it's the one that I'm trying to read or not, it just hypes me up a lot. Like, hearing someone else raving about a book, I'm a lot more willing to be like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, reading, let's get back into that. So that's also a good way that works for me to get out of a reading slump. We're getting to the end of this thing. So number 10 says, there are so many new books coming out that you're dying to read. How many do you actually buy? For me, that's tempting. I've definitely done the like, I'm only gonna get a book or two, and then you leave and you're like, whoops, $75 on books, like a whole book stack at the Barnes & Noble checkout. And you're like, whoops, don't know how we got here. So been there. But I think something I've been doing the last couple of years is that I will only purchase books if they're on sale. And the reason for this is because I've been exploring a lot of other book supply options. I don't know how else to phrase that, but looking at things like Scribd, where it's a monthly membership and you get access to multiple books, or Libby, where it's basically like a digital library, so you can get audiobooks and ebooks for free, just like you would for a traditional library, but it's all digital. And so as a result of that, I get access to a lot of books for either free or like a greatly reduced rate. And so that has made it more perspective, where like when I used to just like, oh, I'm buying a book, it's like, well, you know, I can pay like $17 for this paperback, or I could pay $10 for a Scribd membership for this month and then get access to like 5 books. So that one's the better deal. So I usually try to find one of those other sources to get my books, but if I am going to purchase one, it'll be like a lot of ebooks will have daily deals or weekly deals or monthly deals, but they'll be like $2.99 instead of full price. So I'll usually wait until a book comes on daily deals. Yeah, and like sometimes audiobooks are on sale, and I'll usually wait until there's a really good deal going on before I purchase it. But I don't always have that much self-control. I feel like it's really tempting to be like, oh, this book that I really want. So sometimes I will also just be like, that's fine. So occasionally I will still buy a book full price. But also if I have a lot of gift cards, then I'm more likely to be like, that's fine. And that's usually when I do my biggest spending, especially for full prices, is when I have a lot of gift cards, because you're like, it's not my money. So that is definitely a big like, opens the door, let's go shopping, woo! And the final question in this book tag is, after you've bought the new books you can't wait to get to, how long do they sit on your shelf before you get to them? It depends. It really depends. Like, I've had books that I'm like, start reading them in the car, like you don't get very far. And then I've also had books where you're like, oh yeah, I bought this like 9 years ago, I should probably read that. So it really depends. Kind of circles back to question 1, where I am such a big mood reader. It really comes down to what I'm hearing a lot of other people talking about, what I am most hyped about. Yeah, it really varies. Sometimes it's literally no time, sometimes it's a small eternity. But also too, I think, like circling back to the last question, when I do a lot of books through Libby, when it comes to you, it comes to you. So the way that that app works is that you're kind of on a wait list. And so when the book becomes available to you, you're like, oh, this is my chance. So it's sometimes that just determines it for me, as opposed to me actively deciding. I'm like, oh, this book is available, I guess we're reading it now. So that helps with a lot of the decision making. Sometimes it's just made for me. All right, so that is the conclusion of the Reader Problems book tag. So thank you for joining me on that. Hope you learned a little bit more about me and my reading habits. and have enjoyed hanging out with Ash and myself. But thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I really, really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and it would mean a lot to me if you hit the subscribe button and help me grow my channel. I would love to go somewhere here with BookTube, and I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. It means a lot. So thank you. Feel free to comment down below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything that I'm saying. I would love to hear from you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Not me trying to take a thumbnail picture and getting clawed in the head. What you doing, bud? What you doing, Sleepy? What are you doing? Aren't you the cutest? Oh. Well, now he's just pulling hair out. What are you doing, kid? Hi. Give this video a thumbs up for Ash. Do it for him. Do it for him.